Grants compliance, FATs. The due diligences for the funding approval process must allow for informed and timely GO and NO decision making, provide a basis for decision making and project and funding appropriateness and/or funding and cost recovery, record formally roles and responsibilities between national organizations and PI with respect to program delivery, funding, and contract compliance, act as a mechanism for entering grants and new donors into plans SAP system. The process requires 2 stages. A third stage is only required for humanitarian responses where coded orange or red. Stage 1 is conducted before any decision is taken to proceed with an opportunity and before any significant investment of planned resources is made. The process is initiated and owned by the country offices. Prior to proceeding, a GO and NO matrix should be completed. This will help inform decision-making later on and provide assurance to decision-makers that all major criteria have been considered before proceeding. Stage 1 includes a statement on the proposed project's applicability to the relevant CO and NO program strategy and to the gender transformation. A statement to the effect that the donor meets the requirements of the PI's ethical engagement policy. A basic RASI to create agreement on roles and responsibilities between NOs and COs. A statement of funding arrangement between signatories, including the use of child sponsorship funds and assurance that the cost recovery policy is adhered to. Also, it includes sources of funding for full project budget split by direct, incorporating shared and direct and apportioned costs, according to planned budgeting definitions. Decision-making criteria. The information provided in the FAT allows for decision-making criteria as follows. 1. That the opportunity funds the CO's country strategy and meets quality income standards. 2. Whether sponsored children directly benefit from any of the activities in this project. If not, whether the project is still justified. 3. That the donors included in the FAT are not prohibited by the ethical engagement policy. 4. That risk mitigation is clear through appropriate control measures. 5. That COs and NOs agree on responsibility for covering full project costs identified through implementation of cost recovery procedures. Stage 2. Proposal submission. It is only required when one or both of the following criteria are met. A budget change takes the FAT to next approval level, or the value of a FAT that has already been approved at regional hub or global hub level increases by more than 20%. The purpose of Stage 2 is to record variances from the information provided at Stage 1. It is necessary to update FAT and RASI if required. Also, agreement must be signed off according to the prevailing approval limits policy if there is no longer agreement on how full project costs are covered by funds or how project content meets CO or NO strategy. Then a no-go decision is taken by default. If this stage is required, it must be completed before proposal submission. Stage 3. Final commitments, including contract signature. Stage 3 is initiated and owned by COs. It represents the final agreement to proceed. It can be entered into at any stage in the process, but timing should reflect the point at which binding commitments are made to external parties, usually a donor, but might also be consortium partners, primes or subcontractors, or even consultants. Stage 3 cannot be completed where there is a possibility of material change to contractual terms or funding arrangements. Contract review. Once the proposal has been successful but before a contract is signed, irrespective of which plan entity signs the contract, the compliance and other requirements will flow down to PI, and thus PI has to undertake its own contractual review. Proposal submission. Where the terms of all relevant contracts are known, The submission of a proposal can effectively signal the end of a negotiation between plan and donors, and is often the mutually agreed product of such negotiations. It can be a legally binding document and/or represent commitments on both sides that cannot be amended without reputational risk to plan. The purpose of this stage is to agree on 1. Final project content, 2. Final funding arrangement, 3. Final terms and conditions, having undertaken due diligence on all contracts and terms and conditions offered. 4. Final roles and responsibilities, including flowing down contractual requirements from NOs to PI. Approval at this stage signals specific approval of all contracts within the FAD and must be completed prior to commitments to the donor being made. This can be at either pre-proposal or pre-contract stage. At any stage, should any variance to the budget exceed 20% or should any budget increase push the project into a higher level of approval, or should any policy, including the cost recovery policy, no longer be adhered to, following commitments being made, then the project and grant must be subject to the FAD amendment process and seek reapproval at all relevant levels of authority.